There are three key points we hopefully will get out of this. That software is critical to systems and it's getting more complex. And because it's getting more complex, it's causing more issues. Number two, software estimating processes are core to reducing software risk. Having reasonable estimates and plans are core processes to reducing software risks. And number three, estimation and metrics can provide program managers with significant information that can help them make the wisest decisions, as well as keeping us on track in our projects. It's interesting, I was at a conference last week, and I got on the elevator, and I was wearing a little square badge we all wear at conferences, and some other people got on the elevator wearing little square badges, and I said, oh, can you join the conference? And I'm kind of nearsighted, so I didn't notice they were at another conference. Well, as we started talking a little bit, you know, they were doing a conference on museums or something, and I said, well, that sounds pretty interesting. And they asked me, well, what is it that you do? And I said, well, the conference I'm at is on estimation and measurement. And they rolled their eyes, and they said, well, maybe that sounds interesting. And I walked out of that thinking, I really didn't present it well. What I should have said is not that I'm a conference on estimation and measurement, which is certainly functionally what the conference was, but I should have said I'm here talking about how to improve the whole state of the practice of software and IT, and how to reduce project failures, and how to make IT part of the solution instead of part of the problem, and to generate business value. Had I said that, they might have still rolled their eyes a little bit, but that really is a story of why we do all these things. Not just to do an estimate. Anybody can do an estimate, right? Just for best guess, but to actually do estimates that provide information that we can use to make appropriate decisions. Now, whenever talking about estimating, it's always good to define what an estimate is. Now, I believe an estimate is the most knowledgeable statement you can make at a particular point in time regarding effort, and cost, and schedule, staffing, risk, and reliability. And that, in fact, an estimate isn't a single point, $3 million in 12 months, but there's a range of estimates, so that every estimate ought to have associated with it the probability. For example, this estimate might be a year and $3 million, and there's a 70% probability we'll hit that. 30% probability we'll achieve that. When adding in that extra dimension of probability, we can now understand much better what we're being told, and management can understand much better what we're telling them about systems versus just, I think it'll be a year. And there's a 70% probability, meaning there's a 30% shot probability we'll exceed that, etc. Now, I should have mentioned when I started this, I did this webinar again, I think last year, and it was one of the 10 all-time highest attending webinars, so I'm doing this one again, with a slight different bend on it, but I'm pleased that this is such an important thing to the industry. If you look at the issues of estimation and planning, people, process, and technology are really the key drivers. And when we start using real processes for estimating, we start improving the estimates and helping people to do repeatable things instead of just the best guesses or worst guesses as it may be. I can recall back in my early career having a manager who controlled what was done in software development by making up numbers. Somebody asked him for something, and if it was one of his good friends, he'd say, oh, that'll be easy and cheap. And we put it on the development schedule, and we do it. If somebody asked him for something and he didn't like that person or didn't like the project or didn't think it was interesting enough, he would give some ridiculous number, millions of dollars and years, and they'd go out, walk away with their head in their hand, and that wasn't really the way to estimate anything. If you look at CMMI, for example, it teaches us a number of processes that can be relevant to estimating. One is quantitative project management, managing by the numbers. Of course, all that on a foundation of risk management, understanding what the risks are, mitigating risks, and recognizing there are risks. In many software projects, people say, well, we're not going to deal with risk, we're not going to worry about risk, and we're just going to look at the best cases, and those projects often go awry. Again, looking at CMMI processes, there's a process called estimation and planning. Now, you don't have to be using CMMI to do estimation. I just think it's interesting to look at least one of the process areas and how they have addressed the issues. Estimation and planning, one of the key process areas of the Software Engineering Institute's ratings for projects and ways to improve processes. After estimation and planning, there's a baseline estimate, a baseline plan, and then monitoring and control of that, watching and measuring as things are going on, ensuring the project is staying on track, or if it's getting off track, looking at ways to get it back on track. Now, that feeding back into estimation and planning as see things might be going awry, and then feeding that into measurement and analyze, which is looking towards what is happening here, what should happen here, and how can we do better, and then feeding all that back into estimation and planning. Some people say, well, we're doing Agile, we don't do all this stuff anymore. And I disagree that you don't do all that stuff anymore. If you do, if you don't do this stuff anymore, perhaps you're not really doing Agile. It was in net, because Agile is really highly measured. Estimations and plans that may not be detailed at first, but they get refined along the way. Certainly measurement of progress and velocities and things like that, and monitoring the project. And in fact, it's hard to go, and maybe nearly impossible, to go to a stakeholder and say, hey, we don't know how long it's going to take or how much it's going to cost. Trust us, we'll be agile, and we'll tell you when we're done. They generally need an estimate, at least a high-level estimate up front. If you look at the state of the practice, poor estimates have a terrible impact on projects, and you can see this on projects throughout the industry. Inaccurate estimates, poor implementations as you drop the comments to get hurry up, or don't test enough, or whatever. Don't do things as you should do them because you're just running out of time. Critical processes that don't scale as a project goes from a small informal project perhaps to a larger project by surprise. Emergency staffing, throwing people on the project that weren't anticipated, trying to get them up to speed, which generally causes a decrease in productivity. Cost overruns, schedule overruns, and just terrible things. The state of the practice is very difficult. Now, by the way, if you look at it, it's not that we're incompetent as an industry. The industry is full of extremely competent people. It generally goes back to poor processes for estimation, planning, and risk management. Now, some people will say, well, it's all about the requirements, and that's true as well. But the ability to estimate what the requirement might be, factor in the risk and growth, is a core process as well. Now, incorrect estimates and bad plans are a root cause of subsequent program risk and often subsequent program failure. So conversely, estimation and planning are key to the project success, but most people don't know how to estimate or don't want to estimate or give their honest and true best guess, but don't have any substantiation or repeatability. And you can look at all kinds of systems where it talks about how bad estimates cause difficulties. And looking at it from a program manager's viewpoint, the issues of what's going to happen, bad estimates of size, and failure to control the scope creep or the increasing project inherent functionality can cause problems. Difficulties that happen all the time. We're going to reuse software, and because it's reused, we assume it's going to be free. Well, it's usually not free. In fact, it can be up to 60–70% of brand new, depending on its requirements and testability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at some of the senior program managers and ask why estimates will go awry, they still say, well, we often have staff changes. We have tools break. The tool is going to crank up our productivity. Buy this tool or that tool, and magically we're going to get more productivity. And of course, tools are good things, but if they don't go with change management and processes, they usually don't help much. The customer's always wrong. Well, of course, that's not the case. Of course, the customer changes their mind often, and of course, Agile tries to mitigate that. But whatever programs you're using and methods you're using, responding to customers' changing requirements is part of life. If you plan for no changes in requirements, your project's probably in trouble to start with. Then, of course, the big bosses who decide they're going to fix it with their vast experience and might cut estimates or do other bad things. I know we can do this. You guys are good. We're going to do it in half the time it's ever been done before. And the real thing here is that bad estimates can yield failed programs. That a program that might have been successful had it been on time within budget, if the estimate's been good in the first place, might be considered a failure, might really be a failure, might impact business value and other things. So bad estimates can be major hindrances on programs, yet so many of us give